Hey there everyone, Paler here, and welcome back. We're going to be mixing things up here today and doing something other than Star Citizen. If you only care about Star Citizen, we'll be getting back into that later this week. I'm aiming for Thursday to put out a video on the Avengers series, a more in-depth dive into the Avengers, following up on the Mustang and the Aurora videos. That out of the way, let's talk about something a bit different, Satisfactory. The reason Satisfactory is coming today and not Star Citizen is because I basically spent all weekend playing just this. I had from like 2 o'clock Friday through Sunday evening access to the last alpha build of the game, and in that time I put about 18 hours in, which is a lot for I think anyone, but it's certainly a lot for me into one game. It's rare that a game gets me like this. Before we go much further, I suppose I should talk a little bit about the state of the game and all that stuff. So as I said, over the weekend it was an alpha build. It was kind of their final alpha build before the game launches into early access on March 19th, so a little over a week away as of recording of this. On March 19th it'll go early access. If you buy it, you have access to it, and they're going to build it out over probably the course of about a year. Feels about a year out from launch, but it's also on the Epic Game Store. So those two things right there are going to be a turn off for a lot of people. There's going to be some people that just don't want to deal with the Epic Game Store. They don't want anything to do with that. And then there's other people that just don't want to buy into early access. But if those two things are not your problem, you might have something here interesting to look at. What Satisfactory, as we get into it, it's, well, if you've ever played Factorio, as soon as you look at this, you're going to be like, that's 3D Factorio. And you're basically right. That's what Satisfactory is. It's 3D Factorio from the guys that did Goat Game. They also did, Sanctum 1, Sanctum 2, which were overlooked tower defense games. They were pretty good. They were 3D tower defense games where you actually ran around as the person inside the map, and when the enemy waves came, the alien waves, you could actually shoot with your own guns and take over turrets. I think you could take over turrets. It's been a while. Only problem with that game was they were balanced around multiplayer, but didn't have the player population, or weren't well enough known to reliably get multiplayer, so they made them very difficult. Anyway, we're talking about Satisfactory here today. Satisfactory, it's 3D Factorio. If you don't know what Factorio is, never played Factorio, consider it basically the automation of some of the more advanced Minecraft mods, but a game dedicated just around that concept and taking it to the extreme. Factorio is a 2.5D top-down version of that game where you start off just kind of on an alien planet. There's ore fields around, iron, copper, not brass, but iron, copper, you get the idea. And you go ahead and you gather up these ores and you use that to build basic structures. But then to build the more advanced structure, you need a whole lot more of it. So rather than go around and manually mine it up, you put down mines that automatically pull up the ore. And you feed that into smelters, which automatically convert it over to the ingots. And then you run those into machines, which automatically convert them into more usable parts. And then you run those into assemblers, which automatically take those parts and put them together to build more complex items for building cars and trains and defensive turrets and all this stuff. That's what Factorio is. Throughout all this in Factorio, you're creating pollution, and then aliens on the planet kind of get angry at you, and the more you expand, the more polluted you make the area, the more agitated they become, and then they start attacking. So you're building walls, you're using the materials to create weapons, to automate bullet production, which you're then running conveyor belts out to your turrets to unload bullets into them, so that you have automated defenses, so you can continue to expand, and so on. Satisfactory takes a lot of that, boils it down, converts it over into 3D, and just makes it look really, really nice. There's certainly a bit currently in loss of complexity, though I don't know how much of that is alpha, how much of it is not. As I said, this alpha build, did I say this? I spent about 18 hours with it over the course of the weekend. What we have currently available is the gameplay loop initially is much the same. So within Satisfactory, you start off, you have quote-unquote one of 3 locations to choose from, starting locations on one large map. Currently, no part of this map seems to be randomly generated or anything like that. It looks like it's been one really well-crafted, handmade map, and it seems to be fairly big. We weren't able to explore everything. And currently within the alpha build, there's only access to one starting location on it. And that starting location seems to be the southwest corner of the map, which is kind of a quote-unquote safer area. When you drop in, there'll be a few hostile little, like, four-legged ram type things that'll run around and try to attack you or whatever, but they're not very dangerous. So you're gonna drop down, and your goal is to basically initially create a space elevator. Well, creating a space elevator with nothing but a hand pick is a bit of a daunting task. So you start off on the small scale. Initially you get down and you create a basic hab that has a little bit of production, like a crafting bench and everything on it. From there, you go ahead and you expand out and you build a little bit of a workstation. In addition, that allows you to put down little small miners. These little miner guys, you can go out to an iron field or a copper field. You can throw them down, and you can put upwards of like 8 of them onto one little thing, and they'll dig for a while. And once they have 100 ore, they kind of turn off. So you have to go back every so often, pull out the ore from them, and then continue on. And you'll take that ore and you'll turn that into iron bars, copper bars, or whatever, ingots I think they're called in game, which then you'll use to construct more advanced type things. But that becomes very tedious, so you go ahead and, not tedious, but time consuming. So you go ahead and you make smelters. So the smelters, you can go ahead and drop down like 3 of these, and you go out to your field that has maybe 3 diggers on it, 3 miners on it. You go out, you come back with 300 ore, you throw 100 ore in each smelter, they'll go ahead and automatically convert it over into the ingots. Well, then you could take those ingots and turn them into plates or rods or whatever, or you could just run conveyor belts from the smelter into a constructor. I think they're called constructors in this game. I think they're fabricators in Factorio. You run them into constructors, which will automatically convert them. So rather than going through all the steps, basically all you do is you grab the ore, you throw the ore into it, then go to the other end where you've put a large container or whatever, and you take the rods out or whatever you need to construct the next things. As you do this, you're upgrading your little hab until finally at tier 5, your hab gains this little space drone. So this like little space courier that'll come and go, which will unlock sort of pseudo research, where you'll have different techs you can look at in a chart type thing, and you'll say, okay, this one here has better optimization for my conveyor belts. I can do mergers and splitters. So I could take all of my metal, merge them together and put them into one chest. Then on the other side, I could come out of that chest, split them back out to 3 channels, and feed them into different things. So you can go ahead and it'll say, all right, for this we need 50 copper wire, 10 plates and 10 rods. You throw those into the thing, send it up to the space station, they give you the tech, and now you can continue on with a little bit of a timer involved with that. Eventually what you'll do is you'll basically have everything mostly automated for you to the point where you can kind of just stand around and there'll be a large miner sitting in the minefield rather than the little ones that has a conveyor belt coming out of it, which will go into a smelter, which will go into a constructor, which will go into a storage, and then you'll have another one pulling from that storage, which will go over to an assembler, which will take them and convert them into screws or whatever else you need, and then you kind of just go around to the different stations and you pick up what you need to build your next thing along the line. And that's the core gameplay loop, and right now it's really, really satisfying. It's awesome. If you're someone where Factorio really scratched that certain itch that you really liked, Satisfactory is probably also going to scratch it. There are some there's some big differences though. For one, Factorio, over the course of your gameplay, you really expand out on the flat plane, right? You're expanding out in the X and the Y. You're not really expanding in the Z at all. There's no verticality towards it. And this works well because in Factorio, the only thing you really have to worry about in terms of terrain is certain rocks that are unbreakable and maybe water. Pretty much everything else, the trees and all that stuff, you can flatten that out. And because everything is on a flat plane, you can just kind of expand out as you need to and run conveyor belts and all that. It's a lot more difficult within Satisfactory. While they've done some good jobs with the conveyor belts and stuff and going in and raising up over elevations and stuff like that, there's certain points where even on a large field, that field's not perfectly flat. So getting things to fit nicely becomes, I don't want to say a problem, but it's part of the gameplay loop. Looking at an area and within that 3D model, okay, I need to do this, this, and this, but you also don't know in the future, right? You down the line, 8, 10, 12 tech levels later, what are you going to need and how are you going to fit that in? So where Factorio, you expand outwards, in Satisfactory, you seem to expand more upwards. In fact, this was like the last 6 hours of my gameplay was mostly just going in and building, like I was like all right, here's a crap ton of iron ore. I'd like to take that, run 4 of these iron ore miners into a building where I'm going to have 4 smelters, which will lead into 4 constructors, and we'll have 2 of them doing rods, 2 of them doing plates, and then I'm going to lead that around into storage. Then I'm going to pull from there. And I spent most of my time just building upwards, building more layers on top of this base, going up. And when it was finally done, I did like 4 layers. And at the top layer, I was using it to make some advanced iron plates, which isn't very high in the tech. But there was a lot of time spent just adjusting and tweaking conveyor runs, learning some of the different conveyor systems, how they have them set up, because while they're all there in front of you, at first they don't just, didn't just click like, oh, rather than do this, if I take this and stack it, it'll snap here, and then I can delete the wall, and I'll use that to make very clean, efficient runs. So there was a lot of time spent building upwards rather than outwards. And for me, it really, really clicked, hence like 18 hours in a 2.5 day window of gameplay. There are some areas where right now it's kind of unknown within Satisfactory compared to Factorio. One is going to be replayability. Satisfactory randomly generates its world. So every time you land, you're on a different world, the resources are in different places and all that. From what we've seen, that is not the case in Satisfactory. Satisfactory seems to be one large hand-built map. They're showing on the initial load screen 3 different starting points with only one of them currently available. And you're going to spawn with that one in the lower left-hand corner of the map, and that seems to be kind of the relatively quote-unquote safe area to spawn in. There's some minor things that are going to be hostile towards you, but nothing too extreme. And it's relatively open, fairly flat, easy area to spawn in. You can go ahead and start exploring out, and you'll find some much more complex biomes and stuff, and the map just kept going. We never found the far end, so it could be very big or it could be massive. We're not entirely sure, as we ran out of time, didn't really get there. But yeah, the map is, there's some question about that. Hopefully at some point in the future, maybe they'll do multiple maps. Maybe there'll be 2, 3, 4 maps, each one having 2, 3 spawn areas, and so on. That would be nice. Beyond that, one of the big things within Factorio that drives it later on in the game is, as you've expanded out, you've angered this alien insect race. And they become more and more aggressive. So in order to expand, you must first expand your defenses in order to drive them back. Excuse me. So there's like this chain of, okay, there's a new resource, I want to get out to that resource, or maybe I need to open up a new area to do some more advanced production. So I need another 2 by 2 kilometers. So you got to go out and you got to push the enemy out of the way. You got to push the aliens back. You got to get walls up. You got to defensive turrets up and all that stuff. And that's a large part of the gameplay loop. Right now, there's none of that within Satisfactory, and I don't know if there ever is going to be. There seems to be some sort of like, there's these, they look like insect colonies, and they're putting off this green gas, and if you get close to it, it hurts you. But there's no actual insects. At no point in expanding out, and at some points, my base got fairly big. It was taking up probably, like 2 kilometers one way, 1 kilometer the other way, putting up there was 4 coal burners producing power. There was 10 or so smelters, and then another 10 or so fabricators and all that stuff. So it wasn't small by any means. And at no point did anything become hostile and be like, oh, you're creating pollution and come after me. Which also makes sense because there's no defenses within the game. There are walls. You can go ahead and build wall structures, hence how I'm doing the 3D building upwards, the verticality, building the large building that I was putting everything in, using walls, foundations, and all that stuff. There's an outlook tower, but you only there's a little electric taser for an offensive weapon, and then eventually there's a rebar gun that shoots a rebar spike, and it fires 1, and then you got like a 2.5 reload, then it fires 1, and then you got like a 2.5 reload. So there's currently no real like offensive alien killing or defensive alien killing capabilities within game. And I honestly don't know if they're going to be there or not. It's just purely speculation. Looking at the way they've done the alien insect colonies, they've used those to kind of isolate areas. There'll be areas where you go down and there'll be a narrow path, and if only you had some type of way of clearing out the gas or like a respirator or something, you could get past them. But like it goes down, it looks like goes into a large cave. You can't really explore down into there because of it. So either it's going to be more of a environmentally friendly game where you're just going to you're going to maybe get a respirator and then you'll be able to walk through it, or maybe you're going to get a flamethrower, you're going to be able to burn it down. That's a big unknown, and I'm interested to see how it goes. Hopefully it goes more the Factorio rate, where as you expand out, enemies become more hostile towards you, and then they're going to attack more aggressively, so you need to start setting up defensive turrets, and you got to look at your production lines, and kind of, it'll force you to stay, not overexpand, right? If you got to go out that to one area and get coal, well, you're going to need to go out there and you're going to have to set up defenses around it first before you start worrying about fearing it back and forth. It creates more of a strategic level. If not, that's also fine. There's still some fun to be had, or a good bit of fun to be had in doing the production line stuff, and so on. Beyond that, like, I don't think in terms of complexity, Satisfactory is ever going to get to quite the point where Factorio was or is. There's currently available 3 tech levels within Satisfactory. We can see a 4th one, and then there's like 5 or 6 more that are kind of hidden behind, not available in alpha. So we can see that there's probably going to be roughly 10 to 12 tech levels at least currently planned out within it. So maybe I'm wrong here. Maybe in time you will go ahead and you'll take a single thing of iron ore and it'll run through 15, 20 stages until on the far end it's outputting a solar panel. Maybe we'll get to that point. I don't quite think so. I think it's going to be more of 8 stages. Right? The 20 stages isn't uncommon in Factorio. I think in Satisfactory it's more going to be about 8 stages. That's just my instincts. But we'll see more of that as we come into early access here going on down the line. Some other good things. So there's no real survival elements within the game. Rather than worried about food and water and all that stuff, you do have health, and some of the hostile enemies will hit you if you fall from too high of a cliff or whatever. You'll take damage, and in those situations you can eat food to regain your health. But there's no hunger meters, there's no fluid intake meters, you don't need to worry about starvation or anything like that in terms of survival. There's no stamina meters. You're sprinting all over the place. You're running from point A to point B, back and forth. You have a fairly high jump, allowing you to navigate reasonable variations in terrain and all that stuff. In fact, all that system felt really good. I really enjoyed that overall. It was nice after a few too many survival games of constantly being your character's hungry, your character's starving. It was nice just going out and be like, whatever, I don't care. Oh, I'm a little low on health. I'll eat some fruit to get my health back. That was a nice change. There's some cool stuff with these like tractor automation that I can already see going up. One of the things, because the terrain being 3D and not being the best for just running large runs across everything, what you can do is you can get these like truck stations that you plop down. So you put one of these over by the coal area, and then you run a coal miner up to that, and you build these tractors that you can jump on, and you drive it back and forth. And when you pull up to the truck stop, it'll load whatever material is currently within it or unload it, and you can go back and forth. Well, then you can record this. So basically, you get in the truck, you tell it to start recording, you drive the route, and when you get to one, you sit there and you wait 30 seconds for it to load up, then you drive to the other one, you sit there, wait 30 seconds for it to unload, you stop recording, and then you can tell it to go. And that truck will just drive that loop, whatever you recorded. It'll just keep driving it. So it's a nice little way of, without being overly complex and not needing like some type of special AI to navigate the terrain or whatever, you record basically little waypoints, and then it follows those and repeats that path over and over and over and over again until whatever. So that's pretty cool. There's some neatness about that. It's similar to how in Factorio you would set up trains, but you run actual tracks for the trains. This, you're just setting a 3D map and it just follows it, drives it. There'll be some coolness there. Yeah, I think it's one of those things. If you look at this footage, the footage either appeals to you or it doesn't. And if it doesn't appeal to you, if this type of thing, if you never really dove into Minecraft automation or Factorio, if that type of gameplay doesn't appeal to you, Satisfactory is not going to appeal to you either. But for the people that does appeal to, Satisfactory, it runs really well. It feels really good. There's some real minor things that I'd like to see change. For example, I talked about how you only have like the taser or the rebar gun. There's no hotkey swapping of your inventory items for your defensive items or your offensive items, and that felt real sluggish. Like you had to hit tab, click it on the left hand side, drag it down into your hand or whatever in order to equip the taser. And then you're in combat and you take some damage. Well, now you want to click and you need some boots, so you got to hit tab, you got to open it up, what did I just say? You get to eat some berries. So you got to hit tab, open it up, drag it over, which replaces your taser. So now you're eating. Then you want to get the taser back in, so you got to reopen it, drag it. It'd be nice to be able to like hotkey those things. You can hotkey certain construction items, so like you can have like up to 10 items. So if you're constantly using conveyor belts, foundations, wall A, wall B, you can put those in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then you just hit the number and pop up, and you're just building those items. That's pretty cool, but there needs to be some little things like that. But overall, for an alpha product about to go in to early access, this thing felt great. And I can't wait until the 19th to really play it. So, yeah, I think I've rambled on long enough about Satisfactory. It's really good. If you're into that type of game, it's awesome. It's quite good. Lose a little bit of complexity on one side, gain it on the other side, but just being in that environment. Oh, it would also be really awesome in 3D. If this could be VR, sorry, I said that backward. No, it's in 3D, but this in VR. Would be really, really cool. Seeing like your factories build up and everything and stuff, that would be pretty awesome too. I don't know if that's in the plans. We'll see. The big ones I want to see over the next coming months is what they plan to do to escalate. Is there going to be hostile aliens that come along? What's going to come out of these insect hives? How do we explore them? Where do we get respirators? But just from the time I put into the alpha was enough that I went ahead, and when I closed the game out finally Sunday night, I went over to the store and just bought it. I was like, yeah, I've already gotten my $30 out of it. I'm super excited to see what these other 8 tech trees that I can't access yet are going to bring, and some of the more fun stuff they add in, and sign me up for the next year. Let's see how this thing develops out. It should be awesome. There you guys go. That is Satisfactory. Hopefully some of that made sense. Rambled on more than enough now. Until next time, this has been Paller. Thanks for watching.